Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. This is our third annual International Forum on Youth here at College of the Canyons. My name is Dr. Brent Riffle. I'm in the history department here at COC, and I am thrilled to welcome you to this event. I'm really thrilled to see all of you here in person. I also want to thank everyone online, streaming all around the world for being here. This is, again, our third International Forum on Youth, and each year of this event has a theme. And this year's theme is transitions. And I could argue that transition is a natural part of life. I teach history, and that's all we talk about is transition and change over time. But I also think that what is going on socially, economically, politically, biologically right now is a critical point of transition in a lot of ways. And so all throughout the week, we're going to be diving into those transitions. And I think our keynote address this morning that will start us off is a perfect way to do just that, to look at some of the changes that have been going on in the United States, but around the world. This afternoon at 2 o'clock, we'll go in a different direction. We'll have an LGBTQ plus panel discussion, which I invite you to. And then later this afternoon at 5 p.m., we're going to go in another direction. We're going to talk about food, and I can see that there is already some interest in food. I can tell. That's fantastic. We're going to have chefs from Los Angeles, chefs from here at College of the Canyons talking about their experiences over the last 20 months or so and what it's like in the restaurant business and what it's like in terms of international cuisine. And then all throughout the week, we have panel discussions, scholarly presentations, student panel discussions as well. And another theme, in addition to transitions, is how do we take the ideas from you, students, from colleagues, from staff, from administrators, from faculty, from people in the audience, how do we take your ideas and put them into action? And so at the end of this week, we'll have another set of panels, a student panel on Thursday, a scholars panel on Thursday afternoon, where we try to summarize and try to, again, put into motion what we've learned this week. So great events all throughout the week. And I hope you can join us for as much as you have time to do. With that, I want to really quickly thank everyone that had a part in putting this together. I see Maritza Munzon, who's been instrumental in all this. Dr. Jai Cheng Levine, Tim Honadell, the entire team at ISP, Saab Matsumoto, my colleague that's helping coordinate this as well. Thank you all, I appreciate it. And with that, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Diane Van Hook. It's my pleasure to introduce this remarkable leader of College of the Canyons. She's been at the helm of COC for 33 years and is living proof that if you have courage to dream, go against the grain, trust your gut, to work hard, you can indeed dream and do it. Dr. Van Hook has spent most of her life being an advocate in public education, working to open doors, break glass ceilings, and provide opportunities so that others can move along pathways to success and maximize their potential. Her passion has always been to inspire others to become whatever they imagined they could be. As a young girl, Dr. Van Hook dreamed of becoming an architect, which is something she had the aptitude for, but careers such as those were not open to women in the 1960s. So even back then, she knew she was going to have to break some glass ceilings along the way and change things up. She was determined to change the status quo for women who came after her. They would never have to have doors closed to them because of their gender. Dr. Van Hook had a vision. She was committed. She was determined. She was ready to roll up her sleeves and work hard. And working hard was a given. It was something that she learned at a very young age on her grandmother's farm. Her desire to inspire women to become whatever they imagined they could be, her passion for creating possibilities for women, and her unique ability to spot and to develop potential in others are exactly what led her to pursue a career in the community college system. When hired here in 1988, Dr. Van Hook became the youngest serving California community college CEO at 37 years old. She was only one of 5 women to serve as a district level CEO at that time out of 70 community college districts here in the state. Currently, she is the longest serving CEO in the California community college system. As a community college graduate herself, Dr. Van Hook knows the possibilities that community colleges can create for our students. She works every day to help others discover their own potential, to empower them, to motivate them to realize their own dreams, and to see in them what they do not yet see in themselves. Whether a student, a staff member, a friend, or a colleague, she invests in people. Her keen sense of vision, her strong commitment to our community, and unlimited passion for supporting the development of what most do not think is possible sets her apart from the rest. She is considered the force behind the most innovative and forward-thinking community college in the country. Working with dedication, energy, commitment, and at a fast pace, Dr. Van Hook makes the time to value relationships and people every step of the way. She is tenacious, enthusiastic, and ever committed to the development of human potential as she provides leadership and inspiration to others to work together as a team to make COC an institution of higher learning that everyone in Santa Clarita is proud to call our community's college. There is no doubt that Dr. Van Hook has earned her reputation as a visionary leader, an exceptional innovator, and a perennial optimist who never wavers from her core belief. If you can dream it, you can achieve it. So you know that when she dreams big and inspires those around her to do the same. It is my pleasure, it is my honor. I'm grateful for her appearance here today. So please join me in welcoming Chancellor Dr. Diane Van Hook.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. Certainly the topic is something that I'm extremely passionate about. Community colleges exist to open doors for anyone who wants to improve and grow, period. Doesn't matter whether you are brand new, whether you're returning, whether you already have a bachelor's degree. We have a lot of those individuals here too. They have bachelor's degrees, and when they got their bachelor's degree and went to work in a job that that degree qualified them to take, they found out that's not where their passion was. So they're back here trying to match up what they can do as to make a living with what they love to do naturally. So I'm just thrilled to be able to be here today. So what are we going to be covering today? Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my transition. That's what I was asked to do, how I got from where I started to here, and what my career options were, why I chose education. And then I'm also going to explore with you what your dreams and hopes are and help you think about how you can go from here to there, and the characteristics it takes to be able to do that, because it's not easy. It takes courage. It takes an ability to take risks, not always be right, ask a lot of questions, and believing, most of all, believing in yourself. So when we talk about how you're going to get there, we're also going to follow that up with how are you going to get started, and what do you do if you start and it doesn't work, right? And then how you can continue to grow. Brent already thanked all of the individuals except himself. So we will reiterate and thank the leader of our ISP program, Dr. Jai Chang Levine, Tim Honadale, Brent Riffle, Sam Matsumoto, Maritza Muzan. Is that right? Muzan? Is that close? Okay, thank you. And all the other people. You know, nobody gets anything done alone. So you have the people that are clearly identified with something, but then you have this next layer, and then you have the next layer, and then you have the next layer. And so for all of those who played a role in making this happen, I'm very appreciative. Young Pueblo said, serious transformations begin with two commitments. One, the courage to try new things and act in new ways. And two, the honesty needed to no longer hide or lie to ourselves about what we're capable of doing and what we're ready to do. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about why I'm so ornery, obstinate, persistence, and why I never give up. And then we'll go on to the rest of it. So that's me. That's my first birthday. The other photo is me sitting in the snow, in Butte, Montana. It was minus 52 degrees that day. I know because I have the newspaper headline that I was the front page above the fold when I was 2. I have moved around. Next slide. I've moved around a lot. I was born in Minnesota and St. Paul. I spent a lot of time on my grandmother's farms. I had 2 grandmothers that were farmers. Their families immigrated from either Sweden or Germany and Ireland in the 1860s. And I went to summer school in a one-room schoolhouse, which is the bottom left corner. And inside of the schoolhouse is the far right. So I spent time valuing education from the time I was very little, but in a really rural environment. Next slide. So what do I mean by rural? Well, my grandmothers, neither one of them had indoor plumbing. That means the bathroom wasn't around the corner. That means you had to walk down a little path to this little house called an outhouse. And that's where you kind of went to the restroom. That worked okay in the summer and it worked okay in the daylight. Didn't work well at night and it didn't work when it was minus 30 degrees. So my grandmothers also did not have running water. They had a pump where you would pump the water, and some of you may have family members that has had or still have to do that. And the stove didn't have a switch that you turned on. You chop the wood, you put it in the stove, you lit the fire, and that's how you cook. So I didn't grow up with automatically assuming that things were going to be available and that there were going to be easy solutions. But I also didn't grow up thinking this was particularly out of the ordinary. This was just you did what it took to get it done. That was a big tenet. So my dad worked for a trucking company, Consolidated Freightways. After World War II, he was in the Air Force. And he was able, because he had a 2-year degree from St. Paul Technical College, he was able to get a job as a manager of a trucking company. And that trucking company was really growing. You know, like when Starbucks started, we had a few, and then we had 10 times a few, and then we had 100 times a few. It was kind of that trajectory. So they moved him around a lot to start up a new site, a new business. As a result, I lived in 7 states and attended 13 different elementary schools by the time I was 11. So what is that? What's the significance of that? Well, number one, I never had any friends because I never stayed long enough to have friends. Number two, everything was always different. It was always new. You know that every semester, when you go into a new classroom, it's new, right? Even if you had a class in political science before, the next one is a new environment. Your student colleagues are different, the teacher's different, the subject matter is different. It was the same for me. So I grew up just thinking that's what life was. Constant change, constant unfamiliarity. The only thing I had in common was I was in Girl Scouts and Brownies. So first year Brownie, that's the little brown outfit down on the bottom right corner. And then you get to be a Girl Scout. Now, whenever I moved from state to state, that was the only constant I had, because guess what? Merit badges, expectations, standards are the same in the Girl Scouts from state to state. So for me, that was the thing. I could always put on that little outfit, even if the kids didn't dress the same in Montana as they dressed in Illinois, Chicago, and I could fit in. So that was the common thing. And to this day, I saved my sash. I should have brought it and worn it. I'm going to have to get that into my office. James, remind me to get that into the office. I saved it. I have every merit badge that was possible by the time I hit 11 years old. And I'm very proud of that, but I'm also proud of what I learned from doing merit badges. You had to plan. And you know, it's a lot to ask an 8-year-old to plan, but you had to plan. You had to develop a strategy. And then guess what? You had to have the confidence to do the strategy so you could get that recognition. It's not too much different than what education and our educational system is all about. So that structure really helped me. So Brent, Dr. Riffle mentioned that I wanted to be an architect, and I did. I was always designing things in my head. I started sewing when I was 6 on a little tiny Singer sewing machine that was for kids, but I learned to make clothes for my dolls because we didn't have any money for me to buy store-bought doll outfits, and they were few and far between anyway. And I many times would just make the patterns. I'd like lay the doll down, see how long her arms were, you know, how long her legs were, and then I'd figure out how I could draw a pattern. And I was really good at that. The test results that I took in junior high school, middle school, 8th grade, confirmed I had really good abilities in spatial relations, in an ability to see something in my head and then get it down on paper, that I was a good sketcher. I'm not a good artist, but a good sketcher to get the concept out. But this is the deal. The careers at that time, you could be a secretary, which now we don't even use that word anymore. It's an administrative assistant. You could be a bookkeeper. I like math, so that had a little appeal. You could be a teacher, which my grandmother was in that one-room schoolhouse I showed you. She became a teacher when she was 16. Back in those days, at the turn of the century, very few people graduated from high school. Most of the kids worked on the farms, and because we had an agrarian environment in the United States. So she went to a version of high school that was called normal school. And it was designed to train people to be teachers. So by the time she was 16, she graduated from high school, normal school, and was offered a teacher's job in a rural one-room schoolhouse. So I thought, well, that I'd like my grandma. She's a tough old cookie, and she got things done and had beautiful handwriting, which I did not inherit. As those of you who have seen my handwriting are clearly aware, I didn't inherit that. She was very strategic, and I thought, well, I could be a teacher. You could be a stewardess, which is what today we call a flight attendant. In those days, only women were flight attendants. That job was not open to men. But I get airsick and I get car sick. So I thought that's probably not going to work. Or I could be a nurse. But that I knew wasn't going to work because I pass out when I see a hypodermic needle. It took every ounce of courage I had to go get my vaccination. I had to talk to myself. I'm talking to myself in the line out there in front. And I'll tell you a side note there. I had a nightmare in the middle of the night that woke me up before I was going to go get my vaccination. So, you know, I think it's a Subway commercial, and they talk about foot-long hot dogs or foot-long subs. I woke up in the middle of the night, shot straight up in my bed because I had a nightmare that the hypodermic needle they were going to give me my shot with was a foot long. And I shot straight up, and my husband said, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" I said, "The needle's going to be a foot long." And he said, "I think you're having a nightmare." And I couldn't go back to sleep. So when I went in that day, I made the first appointment of the day, because I knew if I didn't, I'd get scared, and I didn't make up excuses about why I couldn't follow through. So I got over there, and I was clearly nervous, and they said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Well, I had a nightmare that the needle was a foot long." She laughed. And of course, she was a COC nursing student graduate. So it was highly embarrassing. I was mortified that as we were sitting there waiting for me to get the shot, she said the room was about as big as this one. And she said, "Hey, all of you ladies and gentlemen who graduated from COC nursing program, just wave. Here's the president over here." I thought, oh, great. Now when I pass out or yell or do something that makes me look really foolish, I'm going to feel really foolish. So I knew nursing was not in my future. What I wanted to do was I wanted to make things. If they'd had a makerspace curriculum back in the day, I would have been in there every waking minute. I was good with wood shop. I made cabinets with my dad in the garage. I like to tinker and fix things, because on a farm, you don't have, when your relatives are in their 60s and 70s, they don't have the instructions for the equipment that they bought 40 years prior. I mean, if there even were any. So you have to figure it out. But boy, was that great. I got to wake up every day and figure things out. I got to figure out how to do it. Trial and error. That's how we learn. But they said, no, can't do that. Girls can't take those things. Sorry, you can take singing. Well, the only thing I do probably less well than type is sing. When all those places that I moved around, I'd always try out for the Glee Club, which is the old name for choirs, or I'd try out for the choirs in the churches. And they were all very nice, and they'd let me start. And then after like about 3 to 4 weeks, the choir director would come over and say, we really need some help organizing. We think you're a good organizer. Could you please organize the sheet music and then make sure that everybody has it as we're singing? So they kind of pushed me out, which, by the way, I developed a huge inferiority complex when somebody kicked me out. So I decided I already knew how to sew. I knew how to cook. I grew up on a farm. We made most things from scratch. Packaged mixes didn't exist. They existed, but they were very expensive. So I decided I'd become a teacher and follow my grandmother. So how did I do that? Well, I became an honor student in high school, Long Beach Poly High School, go Jackrabbits. And I took college classes through Long Beach City College way back those days in the late 60s as a part of my regular high school day. So I was able to accumulate about 30 units before I graduated from high school. I was going to go back to Michigan. That's where I really wanted to go. I was an honor student, worked really hard. And then the company that had moved my dad all around wanted to move us to Northern California. We had lived in Long Beach in the same house for 4 whole years. 4 whole years. So when they wanted to move him again, we had a family conversation, and we all determined that probably wasn't a very good idea, including my dad. Now, that was very generous and self-sacrificing because he was on an upward mobile track, but he didn't want to uproot the family. He'd seen what it had done over the years. So he said, I will look for another job because I know they'll push me out. In those days, if you didn't go where the company wanted you to go, you were canned. You just didn't have any choices. So I said, okay, well, I'll go to Long Beach City College. I've already got, half of an AA degree done. I'll just go over there. And I went over there, and I didn't have a very good attitude about it, though, because I really wanted to go to Michigan. And I didn't have very much self-confidence because I was in another new environment, and all of my honors student colleagues were off to SC and Occidental and Berkeley and Stanford. And so I was really lucky, and I'll talk about that in a minute, to get a really good counselor to kind of kick me in the seat of the pants and say, shape up or ship out. You're in charge of your own destiny. What you tell yourself is what you will become. Across the board, doesn't matter where you are, in what stage of your life, that's the reality. So I decided I would major in sociology. That was not a tough decision. That was the major you majored in if you wanted to teach kindergarten through 12 education in those days. And 57% of the college going population in 1968 were sociology majors. We were in the Vietnam War. Things were in turmoil. Everybody was interested in protesting and demonstrating and political views. So I had plenty of large group to do that with. I met my future husband at the time because I had to take a speech class to get out of City College. I couldn't transfer if I didn't have that public speaking or speech requirement. And when my counselor told me that in the summer, when I was wrapping up my last 20 units in the fall, and he told me that I had to take speech. I said, really? Can I take physics? Nope, not the same GE pattern. And I said, well, I think I'm just going to have to go home and think about it because I can't get up and give a speech. No way. There's no way that's ever going to happen. So I went home and I came back and he said, well, what did you decide? And I said, oh, well, I didn't get any more confidence about my ability to do that, but I did look into the catalog and I see that I can also take a group discussion class. So that means when I get up in the front, I'm not alone. I've got 5 people with me. So that'd be less scary. So I guess I'll do that. So he said, okay. And I said, but I'd like to take it in the summer because then I can get it over with in 6 weeks rather than 18. That'll be less painful, less stressful for me. So he said, okay, well, there's this kind of new guy, he's been here a couple of years, and you know, he's easy to get along with, and so he put me in this class, and I did my very best in the class. I got an A in the class, and I breathed this huge sigh of relief, because I thought, oh, that is the last time I'm going to have to stand up and give a talk in front of adults. I am so relieved, and I don't have to see that guy anymore, because he was really scary. He scared me because he was so comfortable talking and I was not. So fast forward a couple months, a student in the class, Scott Landis, who's an attorney, and now has been for, I don't know, 45 years. He called me up and he said, hey, do you sail? I said, sail? What do you mean, do I sail? I go to sales. I love to shop. He said, no, do you like sail on a sailboat and pull the sheets and, you know, all that? I said, no, I'm from Minnesota. We do canoeing, we do rowing. You know, I don't think I ever saw a sailboat on a little lake in Minnesota. So I said, I kayak, but it wasn't a kayak in those days. They were called something else, and outriggers, I think. And so I said, well, I'm willing to try it. I can swim. So he picked me up. We went over to San Pedro, and the guy that was coming up from underneath in the below the deck of the boat, I looked, I thought, oh my gosh, that's my speech teacher. I thought I was free of this. Long story short, after I left Long Beach in January to go to Long Beach State, I ran into that person, Roger, and he asked me out. And I figured, well, that's okay, because I'm not a current student anymore at Long Beach City College. So I started to go out with Roger, and we started to date. We got engaged. And 2 years later, on a Thursday, on a Friday, I finished my student teaching, 5th grade in Downey Elementary School. Saturday, I graduated from Cal State Long Beach with my bachelor's degree. Sunday afternoon, I got married to Roger in a backyard. You can see us down there in the bottom right corner in a hippie wedding dress that I made. And that actually was it. You probably have never seen a floral print quite that lively. My husband's tie matched my dad's tie matched. It was a Sunday afternoon. We had 300 people there. It was hippie time. And so we had 3 of his students playing the guitars, popcorn machines in the backyard. And we couldn't go on a honeymoon because the next day his semester started. And lo and behold, I had gotten a job teaching 2 transfer level sociology classes at Long Beach City College. So that's how it all happened. That's how I got into the education field. At the same time, I was still irritated because I knew that women did not have the same choices that men had. And back in the 1950, the labor force consisted of about 30% women compared to 70% men in the United States. In 2020, the labor force consisted of 47% women and 53% men. In 1970, the percentage of women in all STEM fields, math, science, engineering, was only 7%. And in 2020, that percentage is now at 28%. But given that women are more than 50% of the population, it still has not been able to be equally accessed by women. Here's a little bit of a breakdown. I got this slide from Teresa Ciardi. She did a talk on Friday on STEM to students and somebody in the community. And you can see that the biological sciences, the outer red one, is where most of the women going into STEM are. Chemist and material sciences are the next, the orange. Black, computer and mathematical occupations, the next. And engineers and architects, what I wanted to be, an architect still is not very much. So while we've made a lot of progress, we have a lot more progress to go. A month later, I began teaching middle school for 5.5 years at 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. I earned a master's degree in counseling and psychology at night. I then decided, okay, I'm ready to go to the college level. I didn't like the control of the state education curriculum for K-12. I thought it was too narrow. So I decided to apply for a community college job. This photo here, I was bored with teaching middle school, so I started a cheerleader squad. So that was my little girls. This one was one of my favorites, Monica Ionessa. She was just great. And I went over to Santa Ana College on a 1-year sabbatical leave job. So what that mean? Well, that meant that it was like if Saab had a sabbatical and it was a whole year sabbatical. Back in those days, they would actually replace some of them full time to do the job, depending on where the department and the college was. And I knew my person I was subbing for was going to come back, and she was going to have me move out of my office, and then I was going to get to go back to middle school. So I went into the president's office. I said, I really don't want to go back to K-12. I really like it here. I like the creativity. I like the ability to design programs and services. Is there a way I can stay here? And he said, well, you can go over and talk to our grant writer, and you can write some grants. I said, whoa, that sounds really good. I'm a good writer. So I'll go do that. So I walked out of his office, and I'm thinking as I'm walking, and I stopped by his secretary's desk, and her name was Jan Parker. And I said, Jan, what's a grant? And they said, well, that's a thing that you write to get money. I said, oh, good. I love to get money. This is going to be a perfect fit. So I did. I wrote some grants. We wrote 9 grants. We got 7 of them funded, far more money than we ever thought. And I was able to develop the New Horizons program in 1978. We had a New Horizons program here as well. And one of the main areas of focus was to get women into non-traditional careers. Back in those days, there were in textbooks, we only had hard copy, not online, but there were no pictures of women in electronics or welding or auto. They just didn't exist. So I wanted to be able to create that avenue. So I worked on that. And after I left Santa Ana College, the New Horizon program went statewide and was established at 60 colleges in the community college system. And I was so excited about that, because not only did it help people get off of public assistance and welfare, but it also helped people explore their career potential. So after I kind of recommitted at the community college that if you could dream it and you could design it, then you could achieve it and you could do it. And that's kind of been my theme, my driving force ever since I was, well, little, but especially at Santa Ana College. So I went on, I got an EDD in 1981. And between 1983 and 84, I also was asked to start a foundation to raise money and get land for a new college campus, which I thought was really cool. We called it the Orange Canyon campus. That's now called Santiago Canyon College, and it's part of the Rancho Santiago Community College District. And that was great fun. I was always asked to do things I did not know how to do and that I'd never done before. And for me, that was really fun. It was like playing a game of Clue. I just loved it. It was a little bit like chess, some strategy, but mainly it involved just staying after it, a lot of hard work. So at the end of that, I knew I wanted to be in charge. I decided I didn't really like working for anybody else. I wanted to be in charge. I wanted to be in charge. So I applied for a job at Feather River College, which is the one in the snow on the upper right. And I got the job and I moved up to Quincy, California. Quincy is in Plumas County. It's 2,200 square miles. That's a big place. We had 16,000 people. We had more deer than we had people by a long shot. But I got to design really non-traditional things like pack station stable operations programs and wild trout fish hatcheries and things that led to well-paying jobs for the community and our students. After that, I went over to Lake Tahoe Community College and was able to, it was 13 years old. We were in temporary buildings. We were in a Salvation Army building, a converted auto dealership, and a converted motel while we were building our permanent campus. And I was able to help build that campus. And right before I left, right before it opened. Took me 3 times to get my job here at College of the Canyons. I applied in 1983 for the presidency. I had an interview, got an interview, but I wasn't hired. I was a faculty member. I mean, I probably would have run the college like a hippie. I don't really know, because I was just moving out of that zone. We probably all would have had beads instead of pins. But in 2 years later, I applied for the chief instructional officer, the vice president of instruction. And that time I was number 2. So my great aunt Mabel on one of the farms that I spent a lot of time on always used to say, when I'd get frustrated because I couldn't do something, she'd say, 3rd time's the charm. 3rd time's the charm. So when the presidency came open again, 1988, I thought, 3rd time's the charm. This is going to work. So I applied and I was able to get the job. I had a dream. I was persistent. I was insistent. And I had drive, and I never ever gave up. But you will note that the headline, COC to have woman president. In 1988, give me a break. I mean, we hadn't, this community was reasonably conservative and still is, by the way. So in terms of perceptions of who is capable of doing that. So I go back to my comment, we become what we give ourselves permission to be. If you can dream it, you can do it. I believe that through and through. I hear it every day. I get feedback from my former students and our former students and colleagues about what they've been able to do because they dared to dream about it. So you have to think about your own story. You have to think about, what got you here. What did you have to give up or try or risk and be afraid, but you still made it because you're here? What's that inner stuff that's inside of you that forms the engine that drives you every single day? You've all come from various socioeconomic backgrounds, different languages, how your culture enabled you to perceive yourself and its possibilities. You're far away from your family. If you're an international student, you probably have had bicultural or generational challenges. And some of you may be first generation college students. You're all in a new environment. That's something that many people share every time we start a new semester or a new term. People are brand new and they're unfamiliar. And if that's not challenging enough, you've been here during a pandemic. That the first time this has ever happened, other than if we happen to have people in our society that are 106 years old that were around during the Spanish flu, we've never been through these circumstances. We never could predict, and we still can't. Today, I was sitting in my office and I said, I just want to be able to predict something. Because when I make a decision, it has ripple effects, but at the same time, if one thing changes, it has more ripple effects. And I know everybody's working hard, and I would just like to be able to plan on something. The fact that you chose to be here is obvious. It's a demonstration of who you are and what you stand for. You're obviously courageous and resilient and resourceful and open and desirous of changes. So I commend you for all of that. Okay, let's see a short video. Hopefully, if not, we'll just keep right on going.
Lakey Peterson drops in with a clean carve off the top.
You could be me!
Me? Actually, you could be better than me.
You could empower more girls than me.
Score more victories than me.
You could be the man I always dreamed I could be.
No, it's game time.
I get it. You're scared.
Not gonna make it.
I was scared too.
We'll never get anywhere unless you take that first step. This was mine. Then you take another, and then next thing you know, this is you.
And you're conducting an orchestra in Sydney.
And he's in London.
Look, if I can make it here, and I came from here.
Just imagine
how far you can go. Because you don't need to be amazing to start, but you need to start to be amazing.
Toyota, start your impossible.
I'm not advertising for Toyota and I don't get a commission, but they make some excellent commercials. The message is you can do anything. You've got to work hard and you've got to not give up on you. So in the spirit of the theme, I'd like you to think about where you currently are with in life and where you'd like to go next. What's your purpose? What really drives you? What are you really passionate about? How do you want to grow? How do you think you're going to get there? Who do you want on your side? Who do you want in your court or on the sidelines cheering you on? When do you start to do this and how fast are you going to move? The same pace doesn't work for everybody and there is no right pace, by the way. We had a woman 5 years ago, Dorothea Daniels. She received her associate degree at graduation. She sat on the stage. She was 99 years old. She put all of her children and grandchildren through, and then she finally said, well, what about me? She started going back to school 10 years prior to being able to complete her degree. What do you think it's going to look like and feel like when you get to that destination? And also, what do you want to leave behind? What is it that you want people, what do you want to be better when you've moved on than it was when you started? Sarah Destin said, it's not just where you go, but how you choose to get there. And I was having this conversation about that the other day, about the value of broad education and what business is telling us now, that they want people who can do the work. They want people who can do the work. They don't care if you've had philosophy or ethics or history of Western Civ or art appreciation. They want you to be able to do the work. And so we got into this debate about wouldn't it be great if things like perspective and ethics and values could be incorporated into every curriculum, into every content discipline, because that's where you really figure out how you're going to use it. Doesn't matter for you to take a philosophy course or an ethics course. If when you get in and open your own business, your goal is to provide the least quality product for the least investment and make the most money. How does ethics work in that environment? And that's a whole different topic we could spend a lot of time on. So how did I get here? Well, I met a counselor who challenged me to believe in myself, to raise my hand, to jump into the arena and to get involved. He recruited me for some student activities that I thought I had to do. He didn't tell me I didn't have to do them. I assumed I had to do them, so I did them. And as a result, I learned to start to believe in my ability to do that, which I'd never done. I started to see my capability change. And I focused on doing 5 things: being courageous, not fearing failure, because I was brought up where there was a lot of curiosity and inventiveness. So I'd already taken some risk, but our school system said it's either right or it's wrong. You either have the right answer or you have the wrong answer. You don't kind of have the right answer, or the way you're thinking can get you to the right answer, but you have to go a little further. That's not what compulsory K-12 education was about. I learned that I had to ask for help often and enthusiastically, that I didn't know a whole bunch, and I learned to believe in myself. So the first, taking risks, and is you first have to have courage to be able to do that. Courage, optimism, and an unstoppable belief in yourself will serve you especially well, not just now during the pandemic. I'm convinced this is going to be the most powerful generation that we've had in over 100 years, because what students today have had to go through to be able to stay on course and make it is something that you couldn't recreate, you couldn't invent if you tried. You couldn't invent how many times you've been disappointed, how many times it didn't work out, how many times you couldn't get that call back that you needed to have that answer, how many times you were going to pay for something that you needed to be able to do online. You can't relive that. That is what your experience is. And that experience is like a huge building block for you. as well as an infusion of extra courage in your gas tank. Courage is about being willing to try something for the first time, knowing that you're going to fail. So what? So what if you fail? I mean, unless you have a teacher that I'm sure you don't, of the ones that are in this room, I'm looking straight at them right over there. I'm sure that they will help you learn it, even if your first try at it shows that you didn't learn it. So what do you have to risk? So I think all of you need to ask yourselves what you would try if you knew you could not fail. What would you try if you knew you could not fail? It creates an entirely different perspective in terms of options and possibilities. How do you show up with greater courage? Well, you have to know, first of all, what you want to do. Today's online is producing a lot of frenetic activity out there. I think that I wouldn't want to be a teacher today teaching online, because half of the students don't even turn their cameras on. And I understand there are reasons for that, perhaps. I mean, you know, I don't wake up every day saying, oh gosh, I want to be on stage, right? However, it's got to be hard for the faculty member to know where you are if they can't see your face, to know if you're engaged, to know if it's a bad day for you. You can't always tell that from the voice. And by the way, sometimes people spend an hour and a half on Zoom in a class and never ask a question, or if they do, they type it into the chat. You've got to, and then while they're on Zoom, they might also be checking their cell phone over here, or doing some email on another device over here. So in order to develop courage, you need to know for what is it you want to do? You have to focus. Then you have to imagine what it is you want to do that maybe nobody's ever done, or you don't know anybody that's done it. And you have to believe that it is possible. You have to see out there on that horizon what nobody else can see. And then you have to do something. We can think about things all day long. I think about cleaning my garage every weekend. And every weekend I go home with this renewed thought. When I get there and I open that garage door, oh my gosh, I need to clean the garage, right? And then I hit the door and close it after I put the clothes in the wash. Unless I do something, even if it's little, then it's going to look the same. If you only do what you've previously done, you're only going to get what you've previously gotten. And that's important to remember. And then you have to be vulnerable. What does that mean? That means that you have to realize you don't know it all, right? Who does? I mean, with knowledge, doubling? How many days does it take now for knowledge to double? It used to be every 20 years. I think it's a much faster clip than that. Somebody can figure that out and send me that information so I can use it. So you have to realize that you can't fear failure. I mean, when you can go to the next slide. When I used to be in the old administration building, our child development center was across the hallway. And I loved that, because when I was looking at a big ream of paper that I was trying to get through, it was really, really boring. I would go across and I would sit down at those little tables, and I have long legs. So for me to sit down at a little tiny table way down there, that was a challenge. But I'd watch the kids try something, and when they wouldn't get it, they didn't care. They'd start again. It was, oh, I almost got it. You could just see it. And that's what we need to think about when we think about failure. We need to realize what is it that we want to try to do, and realize we're not probably going to get it right the first time. Thomas Alva Edison, next slide, took him 10,000 tries to invent the light bulb. 10,000. That's a really lot. That's multiple tries a day for multiple years in a row. But imagine if he hadn't, or if nobody had. What would our lives be like today? So learning comes from failures, and it also comes from winning. And I love this little video. Let's hear this. Is Never Give Up, Never Lose Hope video. I love this one. I saw this during the pandemic, and I watched it at least 3 times a day. Isn't that fun? I love that. I love that one. I thought when I first saw it, he's gonna bring that little dog over there and position the little dog, right? It's not that, see how illogical that is? Not that the little dog would stay there and use it as a jump off, right? I was waiting for that to happen. In order to take risks, you have to push through the discomfort of fear. The fear will never go away as long as you continue to grow. The only way to get rid of it is to go out and try something. And the only way to feel better about yourself is to know you can do something different or in a new way. Many times people say, no, I'm afraid to try that. No, I'm afraid to try that. All you have to do is go to a ski resort and watch people come down a ski slope that you know can do really good advanced skiing, but they're afraid that they won't be able to. So they continue to do the same thing over and over again, and they get bored. So ask yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen? Fall down. Okay. You know, as long as I don't break anything, can I get up and do it again? Yes. We don't tend to do that. You know, we talk to ourselves more in our heads, just without talking out loud, more than we do to everyone else in our world, especially now in a pandemic, in multiple days combined. You don't know it, but when you're walking, you're telling yourself something. Oh my gosh, I shouldn't have worn this, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I should have done better on blah, 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 blah. Judge, 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 judge. So you got to give yourself a break. You need to learn to ask these 4 questions or say these 4 things. I don't know. I don't know, Mr. Johnson. I don't know the answer to that. I don't even know how to think about getting to the answer to that. And then secondly, I need help. I need help getting that. And then you also need to learn to say, I made a mistake. Holy moly. I don't know what I was thinking, but that didn't work at all. Or if you get cross with someone because you're having a bad day, it's okay. They've had them too. Just hopefully you don't have them at the same time, because that could be a little energetic. But just say, I made a mistake and I'm sorry. And that usually leads to, I need help. If we could all just, I'm a licensed therapist in the state of California. I've used those 4 statements for the last 45 years. When people are having trouble communicating, it usually can be resolved if you look at these 4 things. And then you have to be willing to accept help. Be gracious about it. Thank them. It's not embarrassing. I've never asked anyone for help. I've never asked anyone for help. Strangers on a ski slope, you know, help me. I nosedived over here by this tree. I'm stuck. My ski's in the ground. I can't reach the binding. I got to get help. I need help. I've never asked anyone for help and they said no. And why is that? People like to help. The basic nature to help other people, and they're flattered that you think they might know the answer. That's kind of flattering. So please ask for help. The world only moves forward when we move together video. We'll show this and then we're going to skip the other 2 because I'm behind schedule. I always talk more than I should. Tell stories and.
The inevitable has finally been confirmed.
Next year's Olympics have been postponed.
When the world stood still, the future uncertain, we kept moving. Competing against ghosts of ourselves, of history. But we know progress isn't forged in the shadows. The gains made in darkness advance no one unless they are carried into the light. The world only moves forward when we move together. This isn't about breaking records, but building a place for everyone, regardless of who they are, where they're from, or how they shine. It's about going to the edge of possibility and seeing what's on the other side, together. Because no matter how hard or how far we push ourselves, we can never go further than when we push each other. together, we become giants.
I don't know if any of you saw the little news clip about the New York Marathon that just happened recently. There was an individual who was kind of, I think, at the head of the pack, and he had some difficulty and he just could not run anymore. And so two other men went along each side. They stopped running for themselves, stopped running for their time. They knew they probably weren't going to win it, and they stopped running for their time. And they helped this individual one brutal step at a time. And the impact that selfless and generous act had on people who saw that, we won't forget that for a very, very long time. So I think we've covered this. Let's go to the next one. So you have to believe in yourself. So if you don't believe in you, who will? You are the only person that's going to be with you for your entire life. The only one. Yes, many of you are married, have partners, have children, but you are the only one that you can guarantee is going to be with you for your whole life. So it's important that you believe in you. It's more important that you believe in you than that Dr. Tang Levine believes in you. Yes, it's great if she believes in you, but you got to believe in you too, because her belief in you won't go anywhere unless you believe in yourself. You can change what is and to what you want it to be, but you have to do something. We all become defined by our actions. We can say anything. Words are hollow. It's what we actually do. That's as my great aunt Mabel would say, the proof of the pudding. And you need to actually take action and do something. And it's the behaviors. The best, I have a sign in my office that says, in today's world, if you can only be one thing, be kind. Maybe you have a different opinion, but I think kindness is inspiring the masses today. So you can watch this How to Feel Awesome video on your own. It's really cute. It's done by a little elementary school girl. And boy, you talk about smart and confident, but she's got some great 5 tips that you can do to build your own self-confidence. And by the way, building self-confidence isn't only something that happens in students. It happens to everybody, every day, every time they try something new, every time they take on a new challenge, every time they have a loss, or every time they feel frustrated. There's no time like the present. Our theme for this year is Ready, Reset, Go. That's our college theme. We're ready to get to something else than what we've been in, either personally, pandemic driven or otherwise. And we've kind of reset our expectations, and now it's time to go. But when you go, try to remember that you got to trust your gut. If you watched a movie, I can't remember what movie it was over the weekend. Oh, it was Coda. Has anybody seen Coda? Streaming on Apple. Wonderful movie. It's about Marlee Matlin is in it. It's about a young woman who's senior in high school. She's supposed to go off to college. She was born to 2 deaf parents, and her older brother's also deaf. And they're in a fishing village. And it's all about how she wants to be she's an excellent musician and singer. She wants to be a musician, but she's afraid to let her family down. And the story is you'll need a Kleenex box. But she knew when she was saying to her parents, no, I'll stay here and help you. She just knew that she could figure out someone else to do that. She had to do what was right for her. We all know that. The only bad decisions that I've made are the decisions where I don't follow my instinct. I follow logic. There's a place for logic and instinct and gut to come together when you're making decisions. So where do you start and how fast do you move? Well, as soon as possible would be helpful for you to just get going. I mean, why put off today You know, why put it off till tomorrow, what you can do today? At the end of the time, you still haven't done it, right? And then you look back 3 months later or 6 months later and you say, if only I had started that when I thought about it, I would have it done by now. I'd know if I could get over that barrier. So that you need to really think about. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So I suggest you kind of keep track of your progress. I mean, all these years, I've had a yellow legal pad that I tote around. I bring it to work. I take it home, and I make lists every night of the things I want to accomplish. At the end of the day, I cross them off. If I still want to accomplish that thing, I move it to the next list for the next day. Sometimes I remove it, and I say to myself, because of something that's happened during the day or that I've learned, why in the world did I want to do that? That's a crazy idea. So you just have to continue to move it, but keep track of your progress. Know what you could do better or that you'd like to do differently, because it would maybe be more you, more like you. Reflect on those things that you know you're not going to do. I'm not going to do that again. I will not do that again. Or if I do it, I won't do it that way because it didn't really work. You know, there's an old saying, if we continue to do what we've already done, we will only get what we've previously gotten. We have to change what we do to get a different result. And then focus on what you're going to do next. You know, how do you think it's going to feel like? Well, I don't know. For me, I always get excited when I accomplish what I set out to accomplish. And tough times don't frighten me. I've lived a life of constant change. I think having gone through the Northridge earthquake here really helped me with this pandemic, because I realized there's not one way to do things, there's many. And maybe the way we had to modify it is actually better than the way we used to do it. And you know what? Who a person truly is comes out when times are tough. Who a person really is does not come out when times are good. It comes out when times are tough. If we, you know, I'm not sure wherever we learned that easy was good, but we seem to have learned that easy is good. And easy is not always good. It's sometimes just easy, right? So that struggle, there's nothing wrong with that. And then we'll kind of skip this one. Look at this. This is the next video. It's a great video. So what does the view look like when you finally get there? It's amazing. I never, ever, if I went back to my high school yearbook, 1968, where people would write, you know, what they thought you were going to become. Not a single person wrote that they thought I could be in charge of anything. When I went back to my 10th reunion. I hate reunions. I find them just silly. But that's my opinion. Some people don't. I went back to my 10th reunion. I had lost 80 pounds. I'd gotten married. I'd changed my looks. And nobody had a clue who I was. So they'd be standing around with some of my girlfriends and they'd say, whatever happened to that Diane Owen? I wonder what she ever did. And I just stand there. My best friend was there. And finally, I'm looking at my best friend, no cell phones, so we couldn't text each other, like, say something now. And finally she said, well, ladies, I'd like to introduce you. This is Diane Owen. Their chins about dropped. And so I've never been back to another reunion. I don't need people to know what I do. I love what I do. All I care about is I get to do it, right? But I have filled out those pages, those update pages. Actually, I haven't, my husband has. He likes reunions. And I've gotten people phoning me after they've Googled me and they've said, really? You really are present? Like, really? Like it's some, and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, how much we how much we disappoint ourselves and cut ourselves short when we rely more on the opinions of other people than we rely on our own opinions. So as you go through this week, I invite you to have an open mind, an open heart, and open eyes so that you can allow your inner voice to answer questions with a positive attitude and with honesty. I ask you to be honest. Don't be constrained by others' expectations of you. Be honest with yourself. I encourage you to encourage yourself and give yourself permission to acknowledge the power that you have as one person. one person to change your destiny, your fate, to improve the lives of those you care about, and maybe even people that you don't know yet. That's what teachers do every day. They affect people in ways they will never know, and in most cases, never ever know. I challenge you to break away from your preconceived notions of what you are and what's possible for you, and resolve that you have the power and control to change what ifs, next slide, into want it to be. This is what I want it to be. And then be mindful that if you encourage yourself, if you're a cheerleader every day and push yourself to figure it out with the help of others, that you will get there and you can build your own future. So with that, I'm over. I'm sorry. I'm always over. And then when we're done, you can take a look at the videos yourself. They're really good videos. Okay, so that's what I have to say. I think we don't have time for questions, do we, or do we? Oh, shoot. Okay, I'll ask a couple, then I have to go. I had a big banner made for the women's soccer team because they won the Western States Conference Championship. So I'm going down to the field with my banner. I'm going, which one? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Sasha, 2.
2. Was that the red hair one?
No, the red hair baby.
Oh. So she doesn't have a baby anymore. That daughter grew up, right? She's, yeah. So I got refreshments to take down to them in a great big banner. So I'll ask a couple of questions, answer a couple of questions if I can. Yeah, are there questions? No? Oh dear. Okay. What's the alternative? I mean, if you stop wanting to move forward, you're going to get stuck right there, right? So I realized that the reason what kept me motivated was asking for help and saying, I'm really stuck here. I just don't think I can do this. I don't think there are enough hours in the day. And when I reached out to someone and talked to them, they helped me learn to be a little bit more organized. Because when I said I have a to-do list every day, I do. And it's got about 65 things on it, right? Now that's not practical, is it? Nor it's probably not realistic, unless it's a weekend and I don't sleep. And I do a marathon stay awaker. But for me, it was other people. It was daring to say, I don't get this, Jai, I don't get this. I'm so frustrated. I can't do this thing on technology. I don't get it. I'm just going to not do it. And she'd say, well, okay, that's going to help a lot, right? And so I think surrounding yourself with a very few small people that you are willing to be honest and frank with has kept me motivated. But for me, it's more basic than that. I love to win, right? I love those merit badges. By golly, I want to get those done. I want them to be the best of anybody. I'm very highly competitive. And so for me, it was the sense of knowing that I could do it. I mean, it was just the sense of knowing that. When I went to my first CEO meeting, when I was first a college president, and I went to the meeting and there were like, let's say 70 guys in the audience and 4 of us were women. And the president of the CEOs at the time was asking a question about funding formulas. And he assumed because I was a girl, a woman, I didn't understand math. Well, I'm really good with math. And I mean, obviously, we haven't grown our budget from 8 million to 265 million without me understanding math. I'm also dyslexic though with numbers, so I tend to do math in my head. And so he didn't call on me because he was asking a money question. This was 1988. And finally I raised my hand and I was right there. He couldn't avoid me. I mean, first I started like this, and then I went like this, and then I went like this, and then I went like this, like, yo, dude, put your glasses on. And he finally called on me and he asked me, he said, honey, do you want to say something? This is in front of my peers. I'm stubborn. I'm half Swedish, ornery is a better word, ornery. And I stood up and I said, I certainly do. And I've been wanting to say something since you started this. And I'm assuming you didn't call on me because either, number one, I'm either too new, number two, I'm too young, or I'm a woman. But I understand exactly what you're saying, and this is what we need to do about it. And so I presented this little analysis, at which point I got a standing ovation from my peers. And I picked up my briefcase and I went to the airport and I caught a flight home from San Francisco a day and a half early because I was not going to sit there and put up with that. So, you have to know who you can rely on and who you can't. And they have to want to support you for what you're capable of doing, not for what they want you to do. Big difference. Okay, yes.
This is from the chat. What advice would you give to a student who is not comfortable with constant change?
Well, that's a great question. I think that constant change is the way of the world. It's constantly changing all around us, and we're not in control of that. So there are certain changes we're not in control of. We can't control them. There are other things within our routines that we can control. So my advice would be, if you're not comfortable with constant change, it might be because you haven't had to figure out how to function in constant change. And then as you gain more self-confidence, you will. But in the meantime, focus on the things you can control. Focus on the things you can control, because that's all we can do, right? I mean, you can't control anybody else really but yourself. I mean, maybe if you're a parent, you can. I don't know, I'm not a parent, for good reason. I knew I like to control what happens. And I knew, having put myself through college, being a bank teller at the senior citizens branch of the Bank of America in Long Beach, and teaching 2-year-olds in Head Start inner city Long Beach for 2.5 years. I knew that I couldn't control those little fights. Frankly, I couldn't control them on the other end either, right? So I think you focus on where you go to where you can gain confidence doing, and then you do there. But you also have to take a few risks. If they're calculated, if you do your homework, if you ask for advice, you can minimize the. Am I doing something, or are you pointing that? Do you want me to do something? Okay. I'm not sure what he's doing. He's trying to control me by remote control. It's obviously not working. That's what I would suggest. I mean, change isn't scary. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's great, right? Sometimes, I mean, look at the opportunities that changes in our society have opened up. I'm not a real fan of technology, but my gosh, do I like what it can do for me sometimes? Absolutely. I like not having to get in my car and go get out of my car and go up and get a takeout order. I can just call, one of these places and they bring it right to my door. And I like that. I like the fact that I don't have to, I used to love shopping. I don't like it now. And I like the fact that I can shop online. And I like the fact even better that if I order it on Amazon, he's trying to follow me around. I'll just hold it. Yeah, then I'll save you a lot of effort. If I shop on Amazon and I don't like it, that I could take it over here to Kohl's. I don't have to go to UPS or the post office. I can take it into Kohl's, walk to the back of the store. It doesn't have to be wrapped. I don't have to have tape. I don't have to have a box. I don't have to have stuffing to make sure it gets back safely. I turn it in, and guess what? They give me a 25% off coupon. Now I like that, right? So there are some things I like about it, but you have to realize that you're not ever going to have everything be perfectly, and you can't control everything, but you can control some things, including what you tell yourself. And for those that don't like change, I would challenge that person to say, what is it about change you don't like? What changes don't you like? What changes have you seen even in your short lives that you do like? There's a lot. When this pandemic started, I would get a lot of phone calls from staff and students, and I still do. And then also people in the community. And they'd say, when are we going to go back to the way it used to be? And I said, well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we're not. Because once you learn something new, you don't forget it. So we will be moving forward it differently in every way that there probably is. But why do you want to go back the way it was? Well, because I missed stuff. I said, okay, well, this is what I suggest you do. I suggest you take a big long piece of paper or two, draw a line down the middle, and then you draw a line across the top. So in this cell over here, you put things you miss. And in this one, you put things you don't miss. And then you list everything you miss and everything you don't miss. And if you're really honest with yourself and you think about it, I think you're going to come up with a lot of things that you used to do because you felt you had to, or someone expected you to, that you really don't miss at all. I think this list is going to be as equally long and maybe a little longer. So I think that fearing change is everything. I mean, it's just how you go from one place to the next. So I would ask that person to think a little bit more about. They can call me. I'd be glad to talk with them about it. I talk with students every day, if it's a student. Anything else? Yes.
As an alumni and as running this college, do you have any words of advice or words of wisdom for students attending a community college or planning to attend community college?
Well, I think first of all, community colleges are a really special institution in the state of California. We have the lowest tuition of any community college of any state for community college students. In fact, the next lowest is Oregon, and I think it's 3.5 times ours per unit. So number one, you need to realize that education is here for you. And if you still have difficulties with that, which is understandable in this pandemic, then financial aid or our student services vice president can help you get that barrier out of the way, as well as technology barriers and tutors and all that kind of stuff. I think that that everybody should appreciate that community colleges are the most dynamic part of our higher education system. We can change faster and more frequently than a very large multi-college CSU and UC system. So take advantage of the time you have here. Get as many units as you can because you'll save money. If you take 70 units and transfer them, if that's still allowable, you'll save some money paying for those units at that four-year institution. I don't know if you know that we have a lot of students who have 1 foot in the CSU or UC system as juniors and seniors. They're also enrolled here to meet some of the prerequisites because they've changed their major. And they'd rather do them here, not because they're cheaper only, but because we hire faculty who can teach. We don't hire faculty who want to research. We hire faculty because they say they want to teach and they want to interact with students. That's rare. If you were to take that, if we were all in person and you were to take that basic intro history class at UC Berkeley or UCLA or Cal State LA, you could have, instead of 30 people in the class, you could have 350 people in the class. Never see good old Brett here. You'd be watching monitors on the side, and there'd be a TA in there who doesn't really even major in history, but he has to do that work to earn his fellowship. So my first thing I would say is be grateful that you have the great chance to go to a community college. The second thing is don't assume anything. If you have questions, ask. There are plenty of people you can ask. And keep going until someone will talk to you about it, because there are people who will talk to you about it. And thirdly, never burn your bridges. You never know when you leave and go on, when you're going to need that letter of reference, when you're going to need to have that teacher say, you go to them and you say, I don't really get this. I know I got an A in the class, but I never really got it. Can you help me understand it? So never burn your bridges. You don't have to be extra nice if you don't choose to, but at least be grateful and be appreciative and be polite. And then thirdly, I would say that community colleges, you know, as I said, are for every 18-year-old here, we have a 38-year-old. So community colleges have a mix of students, an older student and younger students. The younger students are lucky because what does the older student tend to most likely have? Experience that's relevant to what you're studying. So network with them and figure out how to learn from them. I gathered some data last week and I learned that I think it's 72% of all of our, if we take all of our classified staff, our adjunct faculty, our full-time faculty and our administrators, 72% of those current employee base, which has got to be about 1,200 people, 72% went here as a student. They came back here because they had a good experience as a student, because this place motivated them. It gave them their start. And I would hope that it will give all of you students that start as well. Okay, I have to go to the soccer field.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.